I'm Shahar Azani, and in the news, remembering the magnificent Jewish communities of the Middle East. On June 23, 2014, Israel's parliament, the Knesset, adopted a law designating November 30th of every year as the annual National Day of Commemoration for more than 850,000 Jewish refugees who were displaced and ethnically cleansed from Middle Eastern and Arab countries shortly after Israel's reestablishment in 1948. Last week, we commemorated that day, and not coincidentally, only one day after November 29th, when we celebrated the partition resolution and the world's recognition of the Jewish homeland. Not coincidentally as well, the following day was commemorated as the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. Contrary to what Israel haters and anti-Semites want you to think, Jews had lived in the Middle East for thousands of years, and many of their communities preceded Islam. But in the 20th century, with the rise of Arab nationalism and the conflict in Israel, the new Arab regimes began a campaign of massive violations of the rights of Jewish citizens. Arab states expropriated property of their native Jews, denaturalized, expelled, arrested, tortured, and murdered so many of them. We must say loudly, clearly, and honestly that not enough had been done to commemorate these communities, to remember their legacy and their loss, to celebrate them. Not enough had been done here in the United States, and not enough had been done in Israel. Today, we are joined by someone who carries that torch forward, making sure this memory is alive. I'm thrilled to have with us on JBS, all the way from Jerusalem, Israel, Professor Yigal Ben-Shalom. A few words about this remarkable individual. Professor Ben-Shalom is a renowned expert in the field of social policy, with a great deal of experience in managing large systems in the public and private sectors. He served as Director General of the Israeli Ministry of Labor and Welfare and as Director General of the Israeli National Social Security Institution. He is a senior lecturer on social policy and management and the chairperson of the Adler Institute, focusing on social and family relationships, such a critical issue these days. He is also the president of the Association for Society and Yemenite Jewish Culture, aiming to preserve Jewish Yemenite heritage. The association was founded by Igal's father, the late Yegal Ben-Shalom of blessed memory. Its purpose is to preserve and nurture the Yemenite Jewish cultural heritage. The association's headquarters is located in Netanya, Israel, and I was very fortunate to get to know Igal, the center, and the amazing people surrounding this venture when I visited Israel a few years back with retired Captain Elgin Long, the last surviving member of On Eagle's Wings, the Yemenite Jewish community's arrival in Israel. That was a truly emotional journey. I wish to welcome Igal. Igal, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm very happy to be with you today, and thank you for the introduction.
Well, I just stated the facts, and I have to ask you something that I think is on many people's minds. Are there still Jews in Yemen today?
Yes, there are few Jews in Yemen today. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago, there were a few hundreds Jews there. All of them came either to Israel or to the States, most of them in Israel. And even one community left Yemen a few months ago, and they landed in Dubai. You won't believe that, they are in Dubai. And there are around 50 Yemenite Jews in Yemen, and they are suffering from the war. And we, the association, we support them, and we try to bring them to Israel.
So you still support Jews in Yemen to this very day?
Absolutely, on a daily basis.
Wow.
Through third party, we do that. We can't do that directly, but through third party, we send them for the holidays, clothes and food and books, holy books, and we hope that someday they will come to Israel.
What prevents them from coming to Israel now? Do they not want to?
In the past, they didn't want to come to Israel. As a matter of fact, they thought that in Israel, they've heard that they will be secular, their children will live the religion, will not be religious, whatever. It's propaganda. So that's the reason they haven't come. Now they can't come because of the Houthis. They control Sana, and they won't let them to come to Israel. But with the first opportunity to come, they will come.
Well, I hope to have them back in Israel as well soon. And when they do, please let us know. We'd love to have you and them join us on a chat and an update. I think that'll be a most interesting episode for us all to hear.
Absolutely. You can find community of Jews from Yemen that came recently from Yemen, like last year, few hundreds, and they are in Beersheba, in Ashdod, in absorption centers, and we support them and try to educate their children who know when they came, they knew only the Torah and the Bible. Now we teach them English and math, and it's very difficult for them.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. So before we touch on your activity across Israel, I will have to ask you something that kind of stood out for me. We mentioned in the intro that the association was started by your father, the activity. Tell us a little bit about your father and his involvement. What has he done and what got him so involved in preserving that memory?
First of all, I must say everything that I do, it is on his infrastructure that he based. My late father, he passed away 16 years ago. He came to Israel at 1930 when he was only 7 years old. He worked at the market and came to Tel Aviv, and he was like orphans because the British hadn't get visas to his parents because they were old, his parents, so they won't let them come to Israel. So he came to Netanya, and he became one of the founder of Netanya, who is the mayor. And as a matter of fact, he came to Israel because of Zionism. Now, when he came into Netanya, there were not schools that he could study.
I just want to stop you there for a minute before you continue. You mentioned he came to Israel for Zionism, and many people reference the entire issue of Jews who came to Israel from the Middle East only as refugees. And the truth has to be told that not all of them were refugees, just like other Jews from other parts of the world. Some were refugees, and some chose to come for Zionism. Sorry.
Right. As a matter of fact, my father came from Zionism, but my mother, she also came when she was 6 years old. She came from a small village in Yemen. The reason that he came to Israel is because her father was a rabbi, and there was a sheikh in Yemen, in her village. He was ill, and his doctor, so-called the first doctor, told him that he should have blood of a little Jewish girl. And he came to my grandfather and asked him to buy my mother because he wanted her blood to cure himself. So my late grandfather told him, I have 5 days to wait until I think how much I want for my daughter. Then he ran away with all of his family, and after 3 weeks they came to Aden with his daughter, my mother, that he rescued her. That's the story of my mother. Of course, she came as a refugee. Now let's go back to my father. And he believed in David Ben-Gurion. So he was like a Mapainik, he adored him. And they sent him to Ashkenazi school. They taught him Yiddish. He didn't know, he spoke very nice Yiddish, but one Shabbat, when he was involved in a Histadrut, what we call it's unions of Israel, and they took all the employees to a hotel to show them the Israeli culture. So what happened in this Shabbat, they sang Israeli song. And my late father got up and said, I would like to sing songs from my father's house, which is a song of the great poet, Rabbi Shalom Shabazi. And he took out his small poetry book, which is like large like this, and started to sing. And the leaders of the state, leaders of the Histadrut told him, now we'll ask you to sit down because you are in Israel. You are now in a new country. You have to be a new Israeli. You have to forget whatever you have studied in Yemen or Jordan. So he saw that. So from this moment, he left everything. He used to work for the Histadrut. So he left his work and he founded this foundation, Association for Society and Culture, in order to preserve the Yemenite heritage, and he has succeeded in this. So he left everything and voluntarily, my mother went to work to give bread to us, we were children, and he devoted himself to this association. Amazing. And he has succeeded. He thought that our culture, the culture of Yemen, of the Jewish Yemen, is a culture of Israel. It's culture of the whole people of Israel. So he insisted to put it on the front, and I'm trying to continue his idea.
He clearly succeeded, your father. And I want to ask you, how did you get involved? So I understand that sometimes our parents have a passion. How was he able to convey it to his son in such a successful way?
Okay, my story is like that. I grew up in Netanya, went to schools, to grammar schools, secondary schools. I've never heard one word about Jewish from Arab countries, what they have done, if they have. Our history started in 1948 on the Eagles, as you mentioned, the pilot on the Eagles' wings. So I've never heard about my history. I learned about history of the European, the Russian, the European, America, but nothing. So, but I studied, I went to the army, I was majoring in the army, in the parachute forces, then I went to university, first degree, second degree, and PhD, never heard one word about Yemenite history, Jewish of Yemenite. But my late father continued with this association. I was involved, just give him advice what to do, but not really involved. Before he left us, he was ill and from cancer, I'm sorry, liver cancer. He called me. I was Director General of the National Social Security of Israel. And he told me, I know that you have your career. I know that you are now Director General of 4,000 people. Before I leave you, before I die, he was dying, I ask you, you must continue and preserve the heritage. I don't left you assets, no houses, no diamonds, nothing. I told my father, Abba, of course I will continue that. So after he passed away, and after I has completed my tenure as Director General, I came and took the Aguda, the association, all voluntarily on my shoulder, and I have established a research institution that its name on my late father, Yemenite Research Institution of Yegal Ben-Shalom. I have 20 professors and doctors. All what they do, they make researchers, what the other haven't done since the establishment of the foundation of Israel state. So what I do now, I take all the advantages of the Yemenite culture, like the history, poetry, philosophy, and I finance to make researches, and I issue books and also research books that is unique in the world. There is a book, it's called Tema, that I issue it every year of researchers, of the greatest researchers in Israel, in the world, and it is acceptable at the universities. So that's what I do, and I also preserve the habits by make international congress in Israel, in Netherlands, in the States. I have supporters all over the world, and I raise the meaning of really Yemenite culture, which I've never studied. So now I know I'm expert because I did it by myself. I studied by myself, I read books, and what I'm doing now, I give the second generation, the third generation to study, because I have a scholarship fund, and I urge them, go to study your history, not only the history of the entire Jewish world. And
I have to say, so the books and research is something that a lot of people are familiar with, but you were able to do also something special. I remember when I visited you in Israel and saw the beautiful center, there was an event that you held for Captain Long. And the event was incredible. When people think event, they think sometimes it's a bit dry, especially if it's historical. And your event has such energy to it. And I remember hundreds and hundreds of people surrounded us. And these were the older generation of the Yemenite Jews that came from Yemen, and then their sons and daughters and grandkids. And they were surrounding Captain Long with love, but they were surrounding their tradition and embracing their past. So you have been able to actually nurture a community through your activities. It's very much alive, isn't it, Igal?
Right, absolutely. It's a live culture, and I tell you more than that. Since the second generation in our church, they don't study at schools about our heritage. So what I'm doing, I'm financing Mori. Mori is a teacher. Afternoon, I send the children to the Mori, and they study how to read the Torah the way that our forefather had read it 2,000 years ago. And you know that only the Yemenite community, they read in the Torah the same accent, the same pronunciation of our forefather, in difference from the other communities in the world. So it's something that they study, and I encourage that, and I finance that, and I think it's very important, because I believe that you can't be a real citizen, you can't be part of the people if you don't know your history, if you are not proud in your history. And I admit that sometimes the children, they are ashamed that they are black, they are in different culture, whatever. Now I make them proud about their culture and the heritage. And you are right. So it's together, the community, they sing, they dance, and now they study also the heritage. That's most important for me. More than that, that nobody knows about philosophers in Yemen. We know great philosophers in Europe, and you name it. But in Yemen, there were great philosophers. What I'm doing now, our association finance a course at the Bar Ilan University. I pay for the doctor, for the PhD, to teach Yemenite philosophy. Why? It's not part of the program of the university, so I have to finance it. That's something amazing. But I think, and many students come to see why we haven't known that there were philosophers in Yemen. Yes, there were. And there were experts in the Maimonides and the others.
It's amazing to hear you and think that this is, even today, it's still a struggle.
Yeah, even today it's a problem, yeah. And in the year 1990, also, I came with my father to the president of the Bar Ilan University. We asked him, why do you teach here Yiddish, but not Yemenite poetry, and Yemenite press, and Yemenite history? He said, look, because it's not part of our program. In Yiddish, there is a philanthropist that gave us $2 million to teach it. Yiddish is not part of it. So I told him, okay, we should collect the money. So we have collected the money, and we have started there 9 different courses about Yemenite culture.
We respecting each pillar of Jewish identity is essential, because we know that here in the US, for instance, there is a campaign delegitimizing Israel, calling Israelis nothing but colonizers who came from Europe. And people don't realize that so many Jews have come not from Europe, but from the Middle East. And so many Jews have been in Israel all along, not just coming back in 1948. That's why the work you do resonates, I think, beyond the local. And I want to ask you, you set a great example for anybody who wants to maintain memory and tradition and preserve all of these important elements in our lives. What do you think we can do here to make this memory alive? What needs to be done? What advice would you give to people who hear you and get inspired by you?
I'm very glad that you asked me this question, because I think that what I do in Israel, you can do in the United States, because we have a lot of material about people who came from the Arab countries. We have 11, like Morocco and Tunisia and Iraq and Yemen. And what I think that we can have materials in English that describe all this diversion between the communities and the history. So we started to do that. So what I think that you and your communities can do, that started at schools and then at home and give lectures, and it will be very interesting, and part of the students, children, and the parents will open their eyes and say, wow, we haven't known that there are so many different cultures that we were not aware about. So I think that you can ask for materials in English, and first of all to give lectures about this, and after the lectures to give materials and to give lessons to students, to the second generation, about the cultural history of more than 1 million Jews who came from Arab countries, came to Israel. Now we are more than 50% of the population. I tried to do that with the Ministry of Education in Israel. I was part of a committee it was Erez Biton committee, to try to penetrate our tradition to the schools, but it's very difficult because there are when you go, when you have a ship, it's very hard to round the ship to another direction, so it's very difficult. So I believe that we can come with lecturers, we can come with materials and give lectures, and also put it in the school afternoon, Sunday school for example. Absolutely, and we should be happy to help and to show you how we can use our knowledge to spread it in the States.
Beyond this being super fascinating, I have to ask you something. Are your children as involved as you are in the work you do?
As the chairman of the other institution, I know that children, they have influenced by three, I would say, dimensions, like the parents, school, and the environment. I'm very glad and I'm very blessed because my children follow my heritage, my father's heritage. And give you an example. All of my children, they are educated, at least the second degree they have, bachelor and master, and one of them is going to get his PhD. So for example, this one, he's graduated from second degree of computer sciences, but now he's going to be graduate of PhD in musicology. And what he make research about Yemenite poetry in musicology. And his son, my grandchildren, still go to the Mori, and he knows how to read in the Torah like myself, like my father, and I'm very glad that they follow me. So they have we call it hybrid, like
hybrid.
Hybrid, like also they are general knowledge, and they are educated, but they keep the tradition. I'm very lucky with that to see that. Of
You've
course,
done a lot.
In Shabbat, in Kabbalat Shabbat, they know how to sing the Yemenite song, and I think it's the right combination to do that for other families in Israel.
The fact is that when you speak about, Yemenite music and Yemenite Jewish music, the influences are very vast and wide. And even people here in the US have seen it in the music of Idan Reichel's work and Ravit Kahlani and others, and even Awa in the electronic field with the Three Sisters. So the elements are there and the celebration is there, and the fact that it's being kept alive, I think, is a great badge of honor for you and for your work. Lastly, I just want to ask you, as vaccines are making their way, and hopefully we get to travel and come to Israel soon, if some of our viewers want to come visit you, visit the center, see the manuscripts, the work you do, where should they go? What will they see? Say a few words about that.
I'm glad to invite everybody who come to Israel to come to our center in Netanya. You have been there several times. These centers, you will get the environment. You get the different rooms with different culture, like manuscripts, like a bride and groom room, like the kitchen, and like the jewelry. And also you can get and have some classes about what we do, lectures and video. And in Netanya, in the center of Netanya, we're very, very glad. And also we can come to your place in the hotel, for example, and to make events, dances and song and lectures about our heritage. So mostly very, very welcome to come to visit us in Israel.
That's incredible to hear. Yigal, I want to say thank you so much. You are incredibly inspirational, and there is so much that you do that we can imitate. And by the way, even way beyond the Yemenite Jewish community, because everybody can learn from the work that you have done how to celebrate the Jewish people's diversity.
But I think that thank you very much, and you have mentioned Ravit Kahlani, so I must tell you something you don't know. I am establishing now a new choir with Ravit Kahlani, with 5-6 singers and players on musical equipment. It will be original Yemenite songs that will be like Yemen blues all over the world. You will hear about us. So I think that
wait.
many friends can study from my way how to do that and to gap the diversity between different communities of Jewish people.
Incredible. We can't wait. Thank you so much, Igal, for sharing your vision with us by keeping the Jewish candle burning and the Yemenite Jewish tradition alive. We carry with us past generations by doing so, making sure their memory and sacrifices are forever honored and kept alive. I think the great message here for all of us is to remember and to remind, never to let that fire be extinguished. I'd like to thank you all for watching. And to all I say, stay safe and stay healthy. I'd like to thank our director, Sloan Copeland, JBS's managing director, Dara Golub, our technical manager, Michael Paley, transmission manager, John McDevitt, and to our wonderful producer of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. For JBS, I'm Shahar Azani. Until next time, see you soon and להתראות.